We've been looking along the swamp and the bayou channels all day, obviously looking for any sort of clues or things we could find that indicated that someone was walking around here barefooted, things that would be sort of unusual. In a way, it's a little bit grasping at straws because, you know, some of the reports are older, though we do have some that are way more recent. So, you know, it's something that if we don't get out here, you know, we're not going to find anything. So, and it also gives you that perspective. I mean, especially the sun goes down. I mean, these are very dark woods, very dense woods. There's a lot of animals. We saw numerous wildlife tracks today, but when you start looking around, you know, you don't see these animals, but they're out here. They're somewhere. So there's plenty of places for things to live and survive without us having eyes on it at all times.
East Texas is a place where legends linger like fog, and in the darkness of these swamps, these mysteries can burn through the night. Locals call it the Saratoga Light, a pale glow that drifts down the old rail bed through the big thicket. Some say it's swamp gas. Others swear it's the lantern of a headless brakeman still walking his last route. Whatever it is, it always appears on these dark, heavy nights to strike fear into the hearts of those who dare to venture into these parts. This same wilderness has long let out faint whispers of something else. The wild man, or what is commonly referred to as Sasquatch. For generations, people have reported heavy footsteps in the dark, eyes shining from the brush, and unexplained movement just beyond the beam of a flashlight. Half man, half myth, always just out of sight. And yet, deeper in these woods, the stories grow stranger still. Some say there's another kind of presence, something even closer to us. The truth behind these tales will become the mystery that pulled us further into the dense, gnarled thickets of the East Texas swamps. For this Wild Man Mysteries episode, our team, including Lyle, Blackburn, and myself, decided to visit the mysterious location and to look into these haunting yet enthralling phenomena. But we first had to pass through Bragg Road, home of the legendary Saratoga Ghost Light. As we made our way through this eerie road, it felt as if there was a gateway to the mysteries of East Texas right here. And once we passed through it, things were going to get strange. And they surely did.
So it's amazing to be here on Bragg Road, the famous Ghost Light Road near the Big Thicket, where for many years people have reported seeing these mysterious lights, almost like orbs that nobody can really explain.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we grew up and we'd hear about the famous Bragg Road and the Ghost Light. And, you know, it was an hour away, but for us, that seemed like forever. So somebody find a map, and every once in a while you hear about somebody who went and saw the light. And it's a legend's been for at least 100 years. People have talked about this out here.
Yeah, I mean, there's even the sign that, you know, signifies the road and the significance of what people see here. So, you know, it's a real legend, at least, if it has a marker. But in terms of what we've been researching, not coincidentally perhaps, one of the weirdest things I've come across was a post on the internet. And this was a post talking more about Bigfoot and mysteries about the Big Thicket. But a guy commented on that and said, yeah, we were in the Bragg Road area. We were staking it out overnight, looking for weird stuff. And we heard what we thought sounded like war cries. Now, you can't make this stuff up. And of course, when I saw that, I immediately thought, okay, this is something to me, because in terms of what had been reported about the primitive humans or the Native American tribes, that, you know, he used the word war cry. So I asked him, I said, are you talking about cries like human-like or, you know, cryptid, Bigfoot or cryptid? And he said, no, absolutely human-like. And he said it was sort of like, he thought maybe soldiers or something like that, but definitely human.
Wow. And that's something you don't expect to hear out in the woods. And it's interesting because one of the key reports in this whole journey comes from about 4 or 5 miles that way. So it's nice how there's like connective tissue between all these weird things. They call it the Saratoga Light, a lone wandering globe that haunts a stretch of dirt road deep in the big thicket of East Texas. The road has another name too, Bragg Road. It is 8 miles of unpaved road bordered by pine and oak woodlands, built on the bones of an old logging railroad that once cut through the heart of these woods. When the train stopped running, the forest reclaimed this area, but something stayed behind, haunting these swamps and bayous. On quiet nights, drivers say they can still see it, a ball of light, white or amber, floating low along the path. Sometimes it flickers like a lantern. Sometimes it swells, bright as a headlight, before vanishing without a sound. If you try to chase it, it retreats. If you stop, it might drift closer. It always remains just far enough away to keep you wondering whether it was ever really there. The stories go back generations. Some say it's the ghost of a railroad worker, a brakeman who lost his head in a coupling accident, now doomed to wander the tracks, searching for it with his lantern in hand. Others claim it's the spirit of a lost hunter or the glow of a phantom energy left behind by old trains that once roared through the trees. Scientists have offered explanations too: swamp gas, phosphorescent decay, reflected headlights from miles away. But none of those account for the light's strange intelligence, how it seems to respond to people. Locals tell stories of it stopping dead in the road, hovering like it's watching, before blinking out as if it knows it's been seen, and then disappearing into the night. For decades, people have come chasing proof, some with cameras, others with curiosity, and a few just looking for a thrill. But the longer you stay, the more line between normality and paranormality begin to blur. The forest gets darker, the air gets thicker, and you're left wondering, what am I doing out here? And in that quiet, that deep, living quiet, the light appears again, drifting, pulsing, alive. Some say it's a spirit. Others believe these glowing orbs are connected to something else that roams these woods, a presence often seen when the lights appear. Around here, they say where the orbs show up, the wild man isn't far behind.
There's been a long history since the early 1900s, maybe before, of Bigfoot type animals living in this area. And they called it a wall man, like a lot of people do. And it's known as the wall man, but it was known to the locals, but nobody ever talked about it outside of the local community. And my friend Marvin Leeper, who's a dedicated researcher, you may have interviewed him. He's really dug into the history of the place, and there's some cool story from like 1890 that he found. And it's been in the news. We have local news up here. There's been 2 or 3 reports in the local news, and we've had activity in this area. So there's no need to drive to, say, Falk, Arkansas, or, Sam Houston National Forest when I can drive an hour away and probably get all the contact I want.
In the early days, settlers told stories about something walking upright through the bottomlands, tall, broad-shouldered, and covered with hair. They'd find strange tracks along creek beds, hear heavy footsteps just beyond the campfire, or catch a glimpse of something moving between the trees. To some, it was a beast living in the wilderness to avoid humans, but to others, it was something different. Something closer to us, a literal wild man who'd stepped out of civilization and gone back into the woods. The big thicket has always had the strange ability to hide what wants to be hidden. And here, it's easy to believe that something ancient still moves out there and beyond the reach of our headlights. Many believe this to be Sasquatch. But what if it was just a human, or a group of humans who want nothing to do with civilization?
In some cases, yes, when you're researching Bigfoot, especially when you get back in time, it's sometimes hard to distinguish between what they might call a wild man or a feral human and what we would consider an ape-like creature. If we presume that's the traits that Bigfoot possesses, you know. And yes, over the years, there's been times when reports have come in, especially the older ones, where people may say, you know, it looked more human. You know, it seemed more human. And, you know, it gets less like, you think about something like skunk apes, you know, they're sort of very ape-like and sometimes, you know, walk with their hands on the ground and things like that. But these are definitely people living in the woods. And I mean, I kind of really like the feral human thing. I mean, just that whole, like when we were kids, it was like, boy, raised by wolves, you know, stories like that. Kids of a certain era, we all wanted to be Tarzan. And you thought it was cool because he was raised by, you know, apes, and Tarzan the ape man. So that was fascinating. So I think that kind of, you've planted that seed when you're a kid. So I was always fascinated by any reports that were suggesting that there's feral humans, along with Bigfoot, you know, equally intriguing. And so, yeah, there's been some, and some where an individual shared some documentation that he had copied out of some archives in a library that wasn't publicly available, talking about a wild woman in South Texas. Now, she was clearly a woman, but many people had seen her, and she was living very primitive. This wasn't just somebody who was hiding in the woods or anything like that. So I thought it was fascinating just how people could survive. And of course, many years ago, it was more plausible. People went off the grid. In the Great Smoky Mountains, people talk a lot about feral humans living back there. So it's not something that is specific to one area, and I think it's fascinating, all of it.
I'm Chester Moore, your narrator on this journey. I've spent my life studying mysterious wildlife, tracking rare species, investigating strange encounters, and looking for the truth behind the legends that haunt wild places. My friend Lyle Blackburn comes at it from a different angle. Where I study mysterious wildlife, Lyle chases legends from the Boggy Creek Monster to haunted bridges and forgotten back roads. He follows the strange stories of the South and beyond, wherever they lead. There was one mystery we had both known about, but it brushed off. That is, until Lyle heard a story that stopped him cold.
One thing that I just can't get out of my mind is one of the reports in Rob Riggs' book. And in this report, Rob had talked to a person by the name of Rick. Now, Rick requested that his last name be withheld, but he said he was a prospector. He would come out in these wild areas with metal detectors and look around. And this guy, Rick, said that he ran into a game warden, and the game warden asked him what he was doing, as they will. And he said, you know, he's prospecting. And he said in the area where he was, which was up here in the big Thicket area, in the bayou area, the game warden apparently said, you should not go back in there without a firearm. And of course he said, well, okay, you know, why is that? He said the game warden said there had been several hunters that have sighted and even been attacked by individuals they described as being big and looking primitive. And he said they were wearing no clothes, and they appeared to be mad or angry, like somebody had trespassed on their land. And this guy Rick said that the warden said that he had even been shot at by one of these. He had seen one. It fired an arrow at him and narrowly missed. So obviously this prospector's shaken up a bit by this, and eventually reported it to Rob Briggs, who was a reporter in this area at the time, and somehow fielded that report, which is very odd. But here's the kicker. We talked to a guy recently when Chester was talking about this subject on his podcast. This guy came forward and said his father used to work for one of the police departments around here. I won't say which one, but he said that he remembers this hubbub about this primitive arrow that this game warden had apparently brought back, and he remembered seeing a photo of it. So this guy basically corroborated this old story that Rob Briggs had wrote about. So this sort of brings it full circle that when you start talking about this, they may seem wild and far-fetched, but not so. Of course, where is the photo? That's always the golden question. But nonetheless, this was a very credible individual. Said, I remember seeing the photo. In that really legitimizes that report. And if that's true, the game warden said that not only had these individuals approached and attacked some hunters, but the game warden himself. Of course, we don't have the name of the game warden, and a lot of times officials like that wouldn't go on record. He may have told somebody that or mentioned these stories, but would probably not come out publicly and admit that happened, although apparently the police looked into it. So you really never know what became of that artifact or what investigation was launched to look into it, if they even did look into it. Just a total mystery.
We're in an area right now, one of the original reports that sent us down this trail occurred very near here. And it's an accessible piece of land that we're on. And the idea is to get a feel for the area, to see if there might be the possibility even of having these hidden peoples in the woods, find any sign. But tonight, specifically, to listen. Do we hear anything that really stands out? And one of the things, because I've been out in the woods many times at night on many different missions, I've never thought about what we're doing now. So I'm tuning my ears a little bit differently to see if we pick up a different frequency, so to speak. Maybe something that we would pass off as something else might be exactly what we're looking for. So that's what we're doing here tonight. While deep diving into the feral human phenomenon, I happened to stumble across a report from a sheriff deputy who had been called to investigate one of these feral human sightings. What he told me blew me away. Now, this person that I know wanted to tell their story, but did not want to be shown on camera or have their voice recognized. But I have verified this, been to the area, seen the map layout, and heard the whole story. And that's exactly what you're about to hear right now.
In 2020, I was working as a sheriff's deputy, and we had gotten a call from the sheriff and asked me if I could find somebody to come with me to get with the Marine unit, because he got a call from the county judge about the judge's wife who seen a man across from their house. And at that time they lived on the Old Lost River on the south side of the river, and across from their house was a bunch of Army Corps of Engineer land. The wife described the man as having been kind of crouched down, not moving, but could see, that it was a man. Described him wearing neutral color clothing and very scruffy hair, long hair. But what caught her attention was she saw the sunlight hitting the man's face across from the deal. And it really creeped her out because he wasn't moving. He was just sitting there, crouched down, watching. Her husband gets home. She tells a story about what she saw to him. And then a neighbor also mentions and seeing somebody walking down the bank across from the houses, because there were about 4 houses on that little stretch of the river right there. And they call it a river. It's more of a bayou. When we get the call from the sheriff, I rounded up a guy to come with me. We called the Marine unit. While we were doing that, I knew the game warden really well for the county at the time. So I gave him a call and explained to him what was going on. He's like, yeah, I'll jump in with y'all. Let's go see if we can figure out what's going on. And the whole time we're thinking, transient, somebody squatting on the core land, somebody, just hiding out. Maybe it's a felon or somebody that's got a warrant or something that's just trying to hide out. Once we get off the boat, we immediately find impressions in the mud, but it was definitely, an elongated human footprint. It was bipedal, one print after the other. And we could see where he crouched, and we started following the prints from where the person was crouching, and we were able to follow it for pretty good ways, but we would lose the prints at time because we'd have to cross actual water. I mean, it's almost like tracking a deer. I mean, you would just work the area on the other side of the water till you find the prints again or the impressions, and then you would go again. But the one thing that I was looking at the whole time we're walking through here is there was no trash like Coke cans or plastic wrappers. I mean, there was some old, I'm talking 1990s Coca-Cola cans and stuff, but there was nothing new trash-wise anywhere. And we followed the prints all the way up to an island, basically. I mean, we were going knee-deep water at times, coming out, finding them again on dry land, and working our way up to this island that was just full of cypress knees. In the middle of the island, there was an area where you could tell somebody, cleaned out the underbrush, the leaves, the yopons, all of that. And there was where somebody had stripped the fronds of a palmetto or yopon or whatever you want to call it, and laid them down to where it looked like almost somebody would have been sleeping there. But the one thing that I noticed out of the whole situation was there was no fire like a person would typically have. There was no trash, there was no plastic, there was no food, there was nothing like that. There was nothing modern in the area whatsoever. It was just natural vegetation that you could tell had been manipulated, and that's about it. And it's okay, so where do we go from here? So we started working around that island, and we literally, on the opposite side of the island from where we came from, there was a stretch of water, and it was probably a little over ankle deep, but there was a stretch of muddy water right now in the middle of it where everything else was clear, like the water was just disturbed. Followed that, and it just kept going deeper in the woods. At that point, we decided, hey, this, we're just chasing, wasting time. Well, not really wasting time, but we're just chasing something that we're never going to catch. At the time, we weren't getting closer and closer to what we were finding. We just kind of found what we saw, and it was time to, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go back. Let's just report what we found. Call it good. We're not going to catch this guy today. So we get back to the boat. We get back to the land. We talked, me and the game warden are talking a little bit. Me and the other deputy are talking a little bit, and we all were just kind of talking in circles about how it was there was nothing in there to indicate that it was a transient at all. There was no trash. There was no, sneakers or shoes or socks or clothing hanging up or anything in that area to indicate that this was somebody who was making a camp out there. And so the next morning, I get on Google Earth and look at the area where this, where we started at, where we found the tracks, where we're looking for everything, where the people reported seeing the person. And it was, you'd have had to swim significant amount of water, and it was probably 2.5 to 3 miles from the nearest road. So somebody who was in there, if they wanted to be in there, they really had to make it a point to get to that point where we saw the tracks and the people reported seeing the person. Never heard of any more reports. We told them we looked, we didn't find, anybody. We obviously didn't tell them that the extent of what I'm talking about now, because we wanted to just ease the issue and let them think, okay, we did what we were supposed to do. We went and looked and we're done. But, the three of us that were actually on foot looking all know that, hey, there was definitely something there.
After spending time in the haunting swamps of the Big Thicket, exploring reports of feral human encounters, Lyle and I turned our attention to the Trinity River to explore other sightings of unexplained human-like creatures, and what we found shocked even us. All they gotta do is go behind the reed right there, and they're gone.
Yeah, just kneel down, no one would ever see them.
Let's try to that big piece because it's got tall ground with those big trees of hard ground over there. Yeah. Okay, we're on this island in an undisclosed location, the Lower Trinity Basin, we're gonna call it right here. And we decided to explore around it and just, because this was, I think, when we were talking, this was sort of the epicenter where a lot of these reports that Rob Riggs originally reported from.
Right, yeah, this is the area where those early reports came in from, so it's sort of ground zero.
So me and my friend Daniel, who's helping us out, walked down this trail looking, we're all kind of split up. And I noticed this human track, maybe a week old. And then there's another right here, you can see about the right gate, and there's one coming that way. It's definitely not a boot mark. So I would say that's a person. Why would they be barefooted?
That's the craziest thing. I mean, even if it's just coincidental, we get off on an island and within 5 minutes, there's a bare human footprint. And who would be barefooted?
I would be barefooted out here. We just came across a snake.
Right.
And that was non-venomous, but there's cottonmouths all out here.
Yeah, I don't think, and most people don't go barefoot either.
No,
I mean, if you're out, even if you're out boating or fishing or duck hunting, whatever you're doing, most people are just not doing that barefooted.
No, and you can see the toe detail right there. So we're gonna continue looking down this little path. Looks like we can't go too far in there, but we're gonna give it a shot and look anyway.
Yeah, and certainly when you think about these type of phenomenon, whether it's Bigfoot or a lake monster, or in this case, seeing something that you believe is a primitive person that has defied all odds, you think, what would I do if I saw that? I think it would be unsettling. It would be really spooky and downright frightening if they were carrying bows and arrows, especially if they drew down on you. It's scary stuff. And if they are what we presume they are, and they're being protective of their land, or they're panicking, or, as people start invading their space, because slowly but surely that's what has happened with our wild lands. They may be reacting in a way that's just comes natural. They don't know what to do, and that makes it very dangerous and scary to think, what if I'm the guy who's inadvertently walked into their domain? And we got to, give them credit. It's like, hey, they were here first in the first place. All the things that happened were wrong in retrospect, and I think people realize that it wasn't handled well. So you can't blame any of these First Nations people who would seek to just live off the grid and would defend their territory if necessary. So you can understand their position, but nonetheless, if you were the target of these very primitive looking guys that walked out of the woods that are like, these aren't hikers, these aren't people from this era, it would just be scary.
East Texas is a place where legends linger like fog, and sometimes the dark itself seems to shine. We came here chasing stories, a light that floats through the big thicket, a creature that walks like a man, and stories of something even stranger still. And the deeper we went, the more these stories began to connect, as if the land itself was trying to tell us something. The Saratoga Light still burns on Bragg Road, flickering through the trees like a signal from another time. It doesn't explain itself, it just appears, drifts, and fades. The wild man, or Bigfoot as most call him now, still leaves his mark too. Footprints in the mud, calls in the night, and questions we still cannot answer. Whether it's an undiscovered animal or something closer to us than we want to admit, one thing is certain: he belongs to this place. And then there's that other mystery, the one even fewer people talk about, one that blurs the line between folklore and human history. feral humans. Whatever is out there, whatever lives in these shadowed woods, it feels odd, older than memory and older than time. Lyle and I didn't come here looking for proof. We came here in search of understanding, to listen to what this land remembers. Because the truth is, East Texas doesn't give up its secrets easily. Out here, stories are alive. The lights still flicker, the footsteps still echo, and sometimes, if you stay long enough, the forest starts whispering back. I'm Chester Moore, and this has been Wild Man Mysteries.